Welcome back. So today we continue on in Sam's journey. So the last we saw of Sam, she had just had a nice regular day at college. She had a nice family night with meatballs and her whole family surrounding her. But she went to bed with not an impending sense of doom, but definitely an impending sense of, because she doesn't know where she's going to end up, which is a very scary place to be. So, sorry, my tea is very warm. Perfection. So, today, Sam is going to wake up in a different place. She doesn't know where she is. So, it's a new adventure for her. As always, welcome back to Mixtapes to Myself. I am Allie, the author and the insane person sitting before you. So, welcome back to everyone. If you're first joining us, welcome. If you're coming back, thank you. As always, as I begin and start each episode or chapter, please, please, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. I'm going to look at my YouTube comments after I'm done filming today. I am hoping to see some comments because in my last video I asked, what is your comfort food? What is the thing when you are having the worst day that you crave, that will bring you back to life, so they say. And now to chapter 15. Cumbies, coffee, and the good kind of confusion. Sam opened her eyes and remembered what day it was. This time, she was at least prepared for the jump. But what she wasn't prepared for was the loud music ushering out of her slumber. She looked around the room and realized she wasn't in her parents' house anymore. She wasn't sure where she was, to be honest. But she had figured that her next jump would be well into adulthood, which meant she would probably wake up somewhere else. Her and Nick had had this conversation a little while ago to discuss what she should expect during this jump and be more prepared for it. However, as her eyes adjusted to the room, she suddenly realized that there was an arm carelessly slung around her midsection. She thought it was sweet that Jacob still held her while she slept. She pressed herself up against him and started to flip her body around to see his face. Then her eyes focused and she realized she was curled up next to a complete stranger. Despite the preparation, she wasn't ready for this in the slightest. She shot out of bed and ran to the door and was in the hallway before she even realized that she wasn't wearing any pants. She saw an open door at the end of the hall, realized it was the bathroom, and ran inside, locking the door behind her. She was clinging to the sides of the sink and trying to take deep breaths. She looked up and was relieved to at least look relatively similar to how she did yesterday, although her forehead was markedly more creased, and she noticed light crow's feet starting to form. Shoot, she said to her new face in the mirror as she realized she left her phone in the room. And your pants, she reminded her reflection out loud. She wasn't sure what the situation was, and she had done zero reconnaissance because she had been so startled by the random man in her bed. He's probably not a random man, she said to herself as she tried to make a plan. She was almost done collecting her thoughts and calming herself down when she heard a knock on the door. Hey, babe? I know you said I couldn't stay last night, and I'm sorry. I fell asleep. I have to run. I have to be at work in an hour, so I'll give you a call later, okay? She heard the disembodied male voice come from the other side of the door. She couldn't even imagine her luck at this part seeming to work itself out. At least the fates were momentarily shining down on her. Sure, I'll talk to you then, she said, feeling like she sounded incredibly silly as she did. She heard the footfalls on the stairs and then heard what she assumed was the front door closing. She exhaled in relief, and then, unlocking the bathroom door, she poked her head out to see if the coast was clear. The hallway was empty, so she quickly tiptoed back to the door that she came from, which was slightly ajar. She walked in and shut the door behind her. Looking around, she recognized some of the furniture, but a lot of it was stuff she didn't recognize at all. However, sitting atop her bed, on the pillow, against the wall, was her stuffed puppy. At least some things never changed, she thought to herself. She looked around for anything that could help her this time around, and she found a calendar hanging from the wall again. Today was circled in bright purple Sharpie, and she smiled, wondering where this Sam had gone. Clipped to the calendar was a letter with Sammy printed on the front. She removed the paper and unfolded it. Dear Sammy, it feels incredibly strange to be writing a note to your former self, but it's doubly strange to be writing that note and knowing that they'll be reading it tomorrow. It won't take long because I know you're old enough to figure this out. And I think that's honestly half the fun of this adventure. You're a history teacher now. We have school and classes from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. However, I always get in early, and I think today of all days, you'll need the time to get yourself prepared. Just remember what it was like to substitute those few times that we did, and follow the plans I have on my desk. If you need help, ask for Ron or Bailey. Nick is also just a text away if you're just getting overwhelmed. My car keys are on a dish in the mini fridge, and my work bag is next to my purse, the black one. Everything you need should be in those bags. After work today, there is a going away party for some friends of mine at the VFW. The directions are in our phone, so just click on the maps and it will tell you where to go. If you can't make it, it's okay. But if you could make an appearance, that would be great. Other than that, enjoy your day and try to stay out of trouble. I'll see you when you become me, I guess. Love you. That seems really weird to write, but true nonetheless. Signed, older Sammy. Sam was relieved to have at least basic instructions from herself this time. This timeline seemed far more complicated than before, and she had actual adult responsibilities here. Her teenage self would be coming on a day off, so she could just hang out. Today was a Friday and a school day, and she actually had to be herself for a day. She was, however, older and wiser than she had been before, and although she was nervous, she was pretty sure she could do it. She went to her closet and was relieved to see that her older self had hung an outfit for her, complete with a pair of Converse. It wasn't what she would have chosen, but part of today was not eliciting suspicion. So she put on the polka dotted dress and the cardigan and laced up her Converse. She brushed her hair and teeth and made sure she looked somewhat presentable in the mirror. You look like a bona fide grown up, except for the shoes, she said to herself and giggled, enjoying that this Sam still clearly kept her childlike sense of wonder. She walked back to her room and grabbed her purse and the work bag and strung her car keys around her fingers and made her way down the stairs. The living room was huge. Two couches, and on the wall behind one of them was a large sheet of paper with drawings and quotes. One of the illustrations was clearly supposed to be a cartoon version of her next to the two other people. She assumed these must be her roommates, a man and a woman, and next to the woman was a cat. As if by magic, she heard a chirp and turned around to find a furry white and tiger striped cat who was as fluffy as could be. She looked back at the drawing and realized his name was Rambo. So she bent down and said hello and scrubbed his head. Well, aren't you handsome? She said to him as he blinked and walked away to jump on the couch and fall asleep in the dawning sunlight. She smiled and continued out the door to a walkway that led down to a very large parking lot. She realized her keys had one of those key fob thingamabobbles, and she clicked the lock button and heard the beep. She had never had a key fob, but luckily her mom's car did. She played Marco Polo with her car for a few more minutes until she was standing in front of the shiniest black car she had ever seen. She clicked the unlock button and the lights blinked and she squealed as she climbed into the driver's seat. This was a massive upgrade from the Buick she had been sharing with her dad for the last few years. An author's note. So my first author's note section, if you will, because there'll be multiple. The apartment that Sam wakes up in, I did kind of base it on my real apartment that I lived in. It was my last apartment that I moved from when I moved to Morocco. The mini fridge is real. That came in clutch. I loved that mini fridge. Because to like if I wanted a snack and it was like a Sunday that I had off and I was grading in bed and I was like, I didn't have to walk all the way down the stairs and all the way through the living room and then all the way to the kitchen. It was just bed, mini fridge, bed. So like loved my mini fridge. But in my head when I was writing it, I was back in that apartment. The cat is also based on a real life cat. As my roommates, my favorite roommate. I think her and my Cambridge roommate, y'all are like tied as my like I can't have a first, second, third. Y'all are just top tier, top tier. Each one brought something different. But my favorite memory of this roommate was it started torrentially downpouring. It was pouring rain. And our immediate response was we looked at each other and knew that we knew what we were thinking immediately, ran outside, started playing in the rain. We're like both in our 20s. I might have been in my late 20s. I think she was in her like early to mid, but we're like in our 20s in this like apartment complex filled with like families and old people, and we're like, wee! Ew. But anyways, the cat is based on a real cat. Shockingly, looks incredibly similar to Stella if you're following the Stella and her brood content. Shockingly similar. Both had that like regal sense. Like clearly they were royalty in a former life type cats. Like beautiful cats. And he was such a peach. I loved him so much. I had a desk downstairs in the living room. Sometimes I'd come downstairs up to my desk and I'd grade, and he'd just sit in my lap. My desk is here. I'm like, hey, Rambo, you're not helping. You're not helping, bud. It was real fun. But yeah, so Rambo's based in a real cat. The outfit. I think I mentioned in a previous author's note, my first year I was really young. It was my first teaching job. I had little to no experience. I was thrown into the deep end. I'll tell this story until the day I die. I came in and they gave me 10th and 11th grade. Cool. US History 1, US History 2, piece of cake. I got this. I can do this. I took classes in college. But then they added an AP World History class, but it did not have a curriculum. So they wanted me as a first year teacher to create a curriculum that the Princeton Review would approve of, which is, quite frankly, insanity. It's insanity. On top of which, I was the 10th and 11th grade chair. So my sweet summer child was in charge of all the 10th and 11th grade teachers and like all parent communication. I was number one. And I was like, what? So like, just for all my teachers out there, I would love for your comments. Have you ever been put in that situation? Because I'm sure every single one of us has a story like this of like, why? This makes no sense. Why would you do this to a human being? P.S. At the end of that year, their response to my contract was, well, your first year has been a complete and utter failure. And that's how I became a middle school teacher. So, got more stories like that coming to you. Let me tell you. Anyways, am I throwing shade? Just a little bit. Now, my first year, like I said, super stressful. My outfits were the last of my worries. So, anyways, I was in a not great relationship. I was not in a great place, just in general. I was super stressed out. So I was just boring and sad. And you could like tell it from the outside, which is really upsetting. Towards the end of the school year, I started to like catch my stride, and like me and my kids really bonded. So that helped because I loved my 10th and 11th grade. Like, shout out to my babies. I love you all so, 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 so much. And I love following your journeys. Most of them are doing spectacularly right now. And I'm so, so proud. But then they moved me to middle school. And again, it's like having a second first year. They moved me to 6th and 7th grade. Now I'm teaching geography and ancient civilizations. I've never even taken a class in these. Like, I don't know how to teach these. So I'm learning as I go. I'm doing the best I can. I'm like, I don't know. But we start to catch our stride. My kids finally realize I'm not a demon. And they're like, oh, we actually love you. And I'm like, I love you guys too. And we're like, yeah. So by the end of the year, it worked out real well. And I started to actually catch my stride in like my own fashion sense. And it's not the same anymore. I really went wild with it. Not too wild because it was a pretty conservative school. But like a lot of like polka dot dresses and a lot of Converse. I did pull out a lot of Converse. I had a lot of flats. Um, I also had, my kids always pointed out I had a sea of shoes underneath my desk because I would come in flip flops and just change into my shoes, especially in the summer. Like the Converse and stuff were for later. But, anyways, lastly, the key fob. That car is based on a real car. I loved that car so much. That was the nicest car I have ever had in my life. It was so beautiful. Unfortunately, she is no longer with us. Well, obviously, I'm in Morocco. I'm not going to ship my car. But it was the nicest car I ever had. Like, I was so used to driving, like, I once had a car that they tried to jack up to change the oil and the frame bent. Like, I've had some janky cars. I had I had one car that literally the door had been welded back on, so it leaked when it rained. And like the little light over the license plate was held on by duct tape. Like, I've had some janky cars. I loved all of them, but this car was something special. She was the nicest car I ever had. I was not nice to this car, not on purpose. I'm a terrible driver. The other reason I stay in Morocco. Anyways, this has been a very long author's note. I apologize. Back to the story. She looked above her head and found a small folder hanging from the visor, and she started flipping through the CDs that were available. She laughed when she found Green Day's Dookie and Outkast's Speaker Box Love Below album that she had just bought the previous year, both of which were some of her all-time favorites. Then she pulled the final CD out, and it was labeled for Sam. She looked left and looked right and pointed to herself, giggling at her own idiocy. Her dad had always said, if you can't make yourself laugh, then what's the damn point? She had, somewhat unfortunately, inherited his sense of humor. She started up the car and then popped the CD into the center console, wondering what would be playing. A guitar started playing a peppy melody that she recognized immediately as The Middle from Jimmy Eat World. She smiled, looked in the rearview mirror at herself, and said, going to be a good day. Bopping along to the song, she pulled out her cell phone and clicked on the icon that said Maps, as instructed by older Sam. She clicked on the button that said Work at the top of the map, and it immediately came to life. There were two separate options, one on the major highway and one on the state highway. She chose the state highway, hoping it would be a nice, relaxing drive all the way to work. The song ended, and she again heard the lyrical guitar picked beginning of another favorite as My Name is Jonas started playing from her speakers. Some things just never changed. And hopefully they never will, she said to her own smiling face in the rearview mirror as she pulled out of her parking space and followed the blue line to the main road. She had been in such a rush on the way out the door that she suddenly realized she hadn't had any coffee this morning. Desperate for something to keep her going today, she kept her eyes peeled when she saw a Cumberland Farms with a big sign in front for 99-cent coffee. She pulled into one of the two spots on the side of the building, clicked the lock button on her key fob, and made her way into the store. As soon as she walked in, The sweet older lady behind the counter chirped, "Hi, Allie." She smiled, trying to hide any confusion, waved and said hello. She grabbed a plastic cup and filled it with ice and poured something called Farmhouse Blend Bold over the ice and then threw some cream in. She had long since stopped drinking the candied coffee her dad had turned her onto as a kid and had since moved to her mother's cream, no sugar mentality. She had put a straw in the top and took a sip as she walked over to the counter to the sweet woman who had already greeted her by name. "Thank God for name tags," Sam said internally as she saw the name Jackie on the small nameplate on her uniform. "Good morning, Jackie. How are you today?" she said, a warm smile on her face. She'd always been one to match people's energy, and this woman was emanating a positivity and sweetness that could calm down a raging bull in a sea of red. She even had a voice to match as she replied, "I'm doing well, Allie. You heading to school today?" she said, and Sam replied that she was. Suddenly, Jackie said, "Ooh, hold on," and in the middle of their transaction ran into the back room. When she came back out, she was holding a stack of newspaper clippings. "I've been clipping any stories about your school that I find. The big one was about the basketball team, and I know you go to every game for your boys, so I wanted to make sure you had it." She handed her the stack of papers, and Sam felt her heart glow for this woman. "Jackie," she exclaimed, "thank you so much. This is the sweetest thing." She felt her eyes crinkling on the sides as she smiled, and now she knew the reason for the extra lines on her face. She would take a few extra wrinkles if it meant expressing her joy to the people around her. She thanked Jackie again and grabbed her coffee and her newspaper clippings and headed back out to her car. As she climbed into the car, she noticed the sunroof with wide, excited eyes. It was a bright, sunshiny day, and while it wasn't exactly warm, it was warm enough. She put the clippings in her bag and placed the coffee in the center cup holder and looked around the center for whatever would open the sunroof. She found a button in the center below the rear view mirror, and she pressed it and heard the mechanisms whirring. Sunshine poured into her car, and she felt like she was full body smiling by the time she pulled into traffic to continue following the little blue line. A second author's note. Cumbies. This is based on a real Cumbies. And Jackie is a real person. Jackie is out there somewhere. Jackie, if you ever see this, which you will not, because I once asked you the last time I saw her, I visited when I was home from Morocco for the first time. And I saw her and she, Allie, I was like, Jackie, I missed you so much. And she was like, oh, you're like, I missed you too. I tried to see her the last time. She retired. Woo, Jackie! Retirement, retirement. I was so excited, but so sad I didn't get to see her. But the last time I saw her, I said, Jackie, do you have like an email or something we could keep in touch? And she goes, I don't have email. Jackie, who the heck doesn't have an email? She doesn't have email. Okay, Jackie. So the likelihood of me ever talking or seeing Jackie again, talking to or seeing Jackie again are really slim. Internet sleuths, if you ever see this, find me my Jackie. I miss her. But yeah, Jackie's a real person. The newspaper clippings. You'll notice while I'm reading the story, I literally tear up. You can hear a little choke in my voice because this was a real story. I was the cheerleading coach for a little while at my first school, if you can imagine. That's right, cheerleading. um, but I saw Jackie every single morning. I got coffee every morning. And so every single morning, how was your day? Oh, it was good. How was the game? Oh, we won. And my girls did so good. So Jackie was like one of my constants in a world of chaos. But she followed our season because she knew how much it meant to me. And so one day I came in and she had a stack of clippings of every time my boys and my girls were covered in the newspaper. And I was like, Jackie. I think I cried. I'm choked up right now just thinking about it. I think I think like tears welled up and I might have cried when she handed them to me and she like came around the counter and hugged me and was like, no, 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 no. I was like, oh no, I'm just happy. I cry about everything. And she giggled and then checked me out. But yeah, oh, shout out to Jackie. Also, he's never going to see this either, but Dave. Dave wasn't there at the end, but Dave was there at the beginning. It was Dave and Jackie every morning, very, very long. And they took care of me and they made sure I had my coffee and sometimes my breakfast sandwich. They got me through some very rough days. So a shout out to my Cumbies. I'm not going to say where it is because I don't want to dox myself or anybody else in America. I'm fine doing it here. Nobody's going to come find me. But yeah. That Cumbies was dope. I loved that place. I loved it so much. So shout out to Cumbies for saving me on a very, very regular basis. Love y'all so much. She had chosen correctly, as the route to work was a beautiful drive. There were train tracks next to a huge river on one side, and then a hill or a mountain on her other side. It was calm and scenic, and there was absolutely no traffic, which she greatly appreciated. Eventually, the lady chirping directions from her phone brought her through a suburban neighborhood that was lovely. There were large, interesting houses with huge front yards, many of them filled with various flowers and trees. She crossed a bridge and passed by numerous businesses and neighborhoods. Finally, she pulled down a side street and took the final right turn. And it said her destination would be on her right. She saw the school, a small one-story building, in the distance. There appeared to be a small parking lot in front, but then a much larger one to the side. She pulled into the large lot on the side and noticed two doors, so she parked in the lot closest to them. It was almost entirely empty, so she parked and then she sat for a few minutes, listening to the music her older self had curated specifically for her. She looked at the clock and it read 6:55 a.m. It's going to be a good day, she said to herself again, as the sounds of Corinne Bailey Rae's Put Your Records On wafted from her speakers, and she took a long sip of coffee from her straw. So, our final author's note, the ride to school. So, the ride to school, I hate highways. I've always hated driving on highways. If I can avoid highways, I will. I will always take like a state highway or back roads, like 100%. Um, the ride to school is absolutely based in reality. Beautiful place. And like, it's peaceful. There was never, ever any traffic, never any craziness. It was just a peaceful ride to work. And I didn't have to deal with all the nonsense. Because also, like, the major highway, there was always like road work going on. There was accidents all the time. I was like, I'm not dealing with that. If I take this route, I know exactly when I'm getting to school. Because as previously mentioned, 100%, I like getting places early. So like, I was always the first one in and the last one out. So like, school started at, I think 8 a.m. I was there at 7 a.m. every single day as soon as the doors would open. 7 a.m., I'm in my car. I still remember 90% of the time I would pull in, I'd be the first one there, or I would pull up next to one car and it would be the lady who ran the cafeteria. And I'd be like, hey, girl. And she's like, hey. To the point where, like, if I wasn't there by like 7:30, people were like, where is she? Is she okay? But no, for the most part, especially like that route, it was beautiful. The houses, the trees, the suburban neighborhood, that was all true. There's this one area, and it's just if you ever look at like old movies of like idealized America, that's what it looks like. It looks just like that. Like, it was so beautiful. Like, I'm not talking like a few flowers, I'm talking gardens, like huge flower bushes, giant trees. Like, it was like the suburban Narnia. And I was like, I didn't even know this existed anymore. But it was just so pretty. Like, I would rather than getting there faster, I would rather take an extra 10 minutes to enjoy the scenery and to take a deep breath and not stress about things. I would rather take my time and then I get to sit back, just enjoy the scenery as it wafts by, listen to my music, listen to a book, whatever. I think I was working on this book once when I, I drove to a front. I was sitting in the front seat, laptop in lap, just, yeah, I would rather. So, my question to you this week, that's my question. Would you rather get there faster or take your time? Faster, take your time. What's your deal? And tell me why. For me, it's just I have anxiety. I don't want to deal with that. But if you're one of those people, I have a lot going on. If you have huge responsibilities and like taking that time is too much, I get it. But comment, let me know what you think. And thus ends chapter 15. Yes, it is a very short chapter, and it is mostly author's notes this time. Apologies. I know. I was going to join it with chapter 14, but then chapter 14 ended up being huge. Um, and probably this one will too. It's just mostly author's notes. But an important setup for where we're going. So now we know. We don't know where we are yet. We don't know what year. We don't know how old Sam is yet. But we do know she is now a history teacher. We know she has a sweet new ride. And we know that she seems to have everything together. So, next week, we get to explore more about where she is. Who is Sam now? What kind of history teacher is she? What's her life like? What is the school like? What are the kids like? Oh. So next week, we move forward in our story to chapter 16. And then we will find out exactly where we are. Again, we came from 2008. So where do you think Sam is? What year? As always, thank you so much for joining me today. If you've made it to the end of this video, I really, really hope that you have. I try to be as entertaining as I possibly can. But I super appreciate you joining me. For those of you who have been here since day one, thank you. I appreciate you dearly. For those of you who are continuing to trickle in as I go, welcome. I appreciate you no less than day oneers. I love y'all so much. Thank you for being here, as always. And please, cannot express this enough. Share, like, subscribe. It really does make a difference. I appreciate all of you. I love all of you. Thank you all so much. Again, share, like, subscribe. Make sure you comment our questions. Do you like getting there faster or taking your time? I did have the question just for teachers. If I have any teachers watching, have you ever had a situation where they just kept throwing stuff at you and being like, catch? And you're like, what is happening? Like the scene in Princess Diaries when soccer balls are just coming from every angle and she's like, ah. That's what it's like being a teacher sometimes. It's fun. It is really fun, guys. It's just certain aspects of being a teacher are like, and it takes a lot to like get yourself through it. But anyways, thank you all so much for being here. Like I said, share, like, subscribe. Please have a great week. As I always say, go with kindness, share a little sunshine, and have a fabulous week, my little chickadees. All right. Until next week and chapter 16, have a great week. I'll see you next time. Bye. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. I really shouldn't be allowed technology.